making time to be here today and listening to Jason and Tobias. I've already been exchanging emails with Tobias, so it's great seeing you here and listening to you as if you're also talking about the same thing and similar stuff, and I could see a synergy between our works, which was very fascinating. So I think we hear a lot of things Tobias has already said. I'm going to repeat them, and I'm going to reference Tobias to most of the things he said. So that will be interesting. So first of all, I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we have gathered on today. I pay my respect to the elders, past and present, for they hold the memories and traditions, the culture and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people across this great nation. So I want to start off with this quote. So here you are, too foreign for home, too foreign for here, never enough for both. So this really speaks to me. So I want to start off by during the pandemic, when I heard the Australian Prime Minister say, if you feel you can't be here, you can go back home. Like when I saw this quote, I really felt a deep connection to what this. So what, like, I asked myself, what is home? Am I a foreigner? And like, how do I define home? How do I define place? My place in this, like in Australia right now. Like I really thought about it. I felt even if I go home, would I be foreign there too? Am I a foreigner at home? Am I a foreigner here? Are we not all on this earth together? Is this also not someone's land where like white people came and took for their own? So how do you define place? So this is just something I wanted to talk about. So my presentation is in four forms. I'll do the introduction, do the objectives of my study, talk about a bit of the literature review, plus the theoretical framework and the research design. Another quote from Frank Fanon, who says, colonized people must have been overjoyed to discover that the past was not grounded with shame, but dignity, glory, and sobriety. Reclaiming the past triggers a change of fundamental importance in the colonialized cycle affective equilibrium. So I want to first of all start with my name. As you all can see, my full name is Ofosu, which is a very indigenous Ghanaian name. My father intentionally gave all my siblings, specifically indigenous. Normally in Ghana, people have Christian names followed by their family names. And when I asked my father, why didn't you give, when I was a kid, I also asked him, why didn't you give me an English name? Because everybody in class, like you go to school and everybody will ask, what's your name? I'll say, oh, my name is Yao. And people ask, what's your English name? What's your real name? Like what? So it means the English name is supposed to be my real name. I never really understood the question. I always brushed it off like, oh, my name is Yao. I don't have an English name. Till I started doing my PhD, and I said, why were people asking me this question? Why were people asking me about my name? Why wasn't my indigenous name just enough for them? Was it that the English name was supposed to be like, why do I have to have an English name? So going through, like writing my thesis and going through, I realized, oh, it's all about the colonized mind, the subconscious. Why? To make you feel you are not good enough to even bear your own name. So I form a personal connection to my work. So I draw on these experiences as an introduction, as an introductory phase to my thesis, where I talked about myself, growing up, my parents, my name, and I'll draw all these connections to why and how the African mind is shaped. Why do Black people think the way they think? What affects their thinking? What makes them, and I draw all these things and I pin them down to the design. Why do we have a design history which doesn't talk about which only talks about Western Western forms of history. We only talked about Western forms of design. So basically, when you look at graphic design or design, like the history starts with the invention of the printing press. Don't we have any indigenous? Were indigenous people not doing design before the invention of the printing press? So these are the sort of questions I pose in my work and trying to find answers, drawing on anthropological literature, drawing on deep past experiences and indigenous knowledge and of Africa and specifically Ghana. So the question is, what does decolonization mean for design educators in design? Why is it important to have a decolonized curriculum in design and for designers? And the answer is graphic design is a medium. That means to be put to use to understand, engage with, interpret, and shape local cultures and society. So basically, my work draws upon from the works of African academics such as Foster, Kwame Nkrumah, Mandela, Kanu, Mfum Mensah, who all look into decolonizing from different angles. And I'm drawing upon these authors to engage in trying to find a curriculum resource which will help teachers in their classroom to teach the right indigenous culture, Ghanaian indigenous culture, to students who are in a technical vocational school. And I believe this will also lead into industries which will draw upon the uniqueness of our culture, of my culture. So the hypothesis of my study suggests that with a curriculum resource that includes pedagogical resources of indigenous culture, protocols and guidelines it will enhance teaching and learning in the TVET graphic design education in Ghana. Another quote: a decolonizing project rejects the imposition of neoliberal academia and colonial framework of result-driven, well-defined problem solving in design. So basically, I use a postcolonial theory as the framework as a theoretical tool. So this model will enhance a cross-cultural pollination and hybridity through unearthed anthropologic and contemporary knowledge, which is significantly relevant in technical vocational education and by extension industrial design in Ghana. Moreover, my study outcome has the potential to support collaborative and cultural situated design processes by encouraging made in Ghana design products through the dismantling of hegemonic relationship embedded in design education, production, and society. Also, the ideas and concepts emanating from postcolonialism, advocating for the break of the structures of a Western power, globalization, deconstructing prejudice, can provide cultural, political, and psychological tools for design education and the processes of design. So how did I embark on this? How do I collect data? So first of all, I've already started collecting data. I've collected quantitative data from teachers, design teachers, collected over 120. I also started conducting interviews with key stakeholders. So basically, I conducted an interview with a design expert, which was an eye-opening interview, which we talked about. He basically said he's frustrated by why, as a country, as an independent country, still have a curriculum which is very British, which is very Western, which we are all not drawing upon our own culture, our own indigenous knowledge, and to educate students. He was very frustrated about this. I also spoke to a curriculum expert who also said it's basically he doesn't really understand why it's the case, but he bemoans that, and he's been trying to advocate for a change. Also spoke to a commercial graphic designer who basically says will be excited to have a guideline of a sort where he will be using in designing. And if he had like when he was in school, if he had known what he knew now, and even when he designs and adds specific Ghanaian culture element to the design, clients are very open. Clients like it more than the Western forms because it's becoming a bit repetitive. People want to see the uniqueness. So the next big data collection I'll be embarking on is a focus where I'll bring all these minds together and talk and have a focus where we'll outline what the details of the curriculum resource I want to build. So I also want to link my research to the political, like politics and the economy. So when you look at the history of Ghana, let me talk a bit about Ghana. So we were the first sub-Saharan country. Ghana was the first to be independent from the British. So when you talk about sub-Saharan Africa, below the north, and when you look at the African map, so below the north, we're the first sub-Saharan Africa. So during 57, right after independence was this push to be independent. So there was this new push to use education as a tool to decolonize and to will build and for nation building. So which didn't, so for a number of years the government tried, but because due to economic hardships from the 60s, so they could link it to the Cold War between the Americans and the Russians, where they were fighting over Africa and fighting over. So during the 60s to 80s, was a bit of coup d'etats and political instability. So we got lost into all of this, and we just recently picked up from the 80s now, and you could see with democracy and as the economy improves, as we have democracy, you could see that people have started advocating for these things. People have, an example is me. I grew up in the 90s, so I grew up wanting answers to I grew up wanting answers, especially my name. I grew up wanting to know why things were what it is, and I believe with the young generation of Africa, by 2030 to 2050, the population of Africa will be the third of the world's population. So I believe that if we start having these discussions and this research, I believe that it will be the push, will be the foundations for the future. So we have to also start creating our own knowledge, our own culture, our own systems, so that we decolonize and we have. So we basically also find ourselves, find our identity and self and place in this world. Yeah. I also say thank you. So if you have any questions, you can ask me. Very short presentation.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Yeah, if you wanted to just up the top unshare your screen so that we can see each other a little better. I can see that Jason already has a question here. Did you want to speak to it, Jason? And then I'll throw it out to anyone else who'd like to ask a question or a comment.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Katie, and thanks, Yao, for that presentation. Yeah. Just to help me get, for myself, to get a little bit more of a background on what you're talking about, because I mean, I know a little bit about what you were talking about, but I heard you mention during your presentation that the system of education in schools in Ghana has been it still has this colonialism residue in it, and it's still really influenced the schools. Can you give, just to help me understand better, a specific example of how that has affected, let's say, TVET education specifically, because that's what your focus is on? Yeah.
Okay, so a bit of context and history. So basically, formal education, you could argue that was informal, like there's both informal and formal education. The formal education was introduced by the by the Portuguese, who were the first to arrive and took, like, the British took over. So you could argue that so basically they started education in Ghana, formal school education. So they did the curriculum, they built the schools. So you see that their curriculum and syllabus is basically was based on we even had the O levels and the A levels till the 80s, where we changed to the primary, because we have primary high school. So it's basically a very British style of education, where, like, if you go to university, you're not going to be trained as an African, you're going to be trained as an African British. Like, you basically come out as a white person. Like, it's a very deep thing where you are taught to be, they are teaching you to be a white person rather than to be an African or a black person. So that's what I mean. And even now, if you open the curriculum and I remember when we were kids, we used to sing in the mid-bleak winter, which I've never even seen snow before. So it's a very subtle way of introducing, because you see poems, like you see poems, riddles, we sing in school, and it's all about, like, Western songs. And I was like, oh, I've been singing in the mid-bleak winter, which I've never even seen snow before. I can talk about so many Western literature, and I can't talk as much as I can talk about Western literature to my own literature. And I can't even write English much better than I can write my native language. So these are all, like, it's a subconscious, I want to say, thing in the mind. I think it's, if you can draw links to why blacks are the way we are. I think you have to be honest, you have to be a black or indigenous person to understand some of the things I'm saying. And if you like this book, Frank Fanon's book clearly describes why, like, the point is, black people in this world right now, some feel are trying as much as possible to be as white as they can, and not really feeling proud, and like they are not proud of their own skin, they are not proud of their own identity, even with the names they give, a sort of training. And so it's a discussion we can have all day of why, and it all links to the education system and how people are trained. Because
does anyone else want to jump in? We can. Shay does, then Tobias. So we'll go Shay, then Tobias. We've got a good 10 minutes. Well, we've got 15 minutes before we go and have our afternoon drinks, but so we've got 10 minutes of questions.
Thank you. You're very inspiring work that you're doing. In terms of your methods and your surveys and focus groups, forgive me if I missed something, but are you doing that with people in Ghana to find out?
Yeah, so due to the COVID, I was supposed to be there in July for 6 months, but due to the COVID situation, I'm doing it online, which has been great. It hasn't really, it's been challenging, but also has its own perks. So at least I get to do it, and I don't have to go home and can't return. So it's, so that's what I've been doing. I've been contacting them online. So
thank you.
Tobias?
Thanks, Joe, and thanks, Shay, too, for asking a question. Mine is similar. I'm just interested, like you indicated that you already spoken to a few people, and since July, what specifically are the design methods or the data that presents itself now that comes out of those interviews with those people? What are they doing differently? Are there any concrete pedagogical tools or anything that you could extract already?
Yeah. So we've talked about the different, we also have like the different knowledge alphabetical systems. We've talked about the different, the visual culture. So we have like our own systems, our own processes. Respect. You have like respect, color plays like how we, because how we perceive color is very different from how Western notions and like color psychology. Because I could use what we perceive white to be is very different to what. So like we see, like when someone is a newborn, like when someone gives birth, the person has to wear white, and we have like colors you use for, like it's a hierarchical thing. So you have colors you have to use for elderly people, you can't use for young people. So all these things that if students know, and even if you are a commercial, like you come out of school and you're a commercial designer, you are designing, because basically designing for the public. And if you are designing things that doesn't relate to the day-to-day lives of people you are talking to, then it seems you are a bit lost. You're just copying and pasting what someone has done somewhere, instead of drawing upon your own environment and experiences to create something unique for yourself, which I feel in the long run will even benefit us economically. Because if you are creating our own stuff and people want some uniqueness, because we have vibrant colors, we have our way of thinking, we have, like if you look at African sculpture, if you look at African patterns, it's so colorful, it's so beautiful. And if you are using these things in our works and people are buying into it, it will be beneficially and in the long run very help us economically, because we really need all these things.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Have you published anything yet, like that falls out of your research?
The COVID, because I really had a plan for the 6 months. I was going to attend a few conferences back home, and like because I really wanted to speak to authority, like pick specific conferences I really wanted to speak to, so that I could get the audience I wanted to. Because if you go there and challenge, like challenge the thinking of, like, to them. I think when I talk about these things, a bit lost. Probably when I go home and I talk, people will understand it more and relate to it better. But so far I have a few drafts I'm working on, so hopefully next year I get a chance to publish.
Yeah, cool. Look forward to it. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Does anyone else want to jump in? We'll probably take the last question now, and then we will wrap up this session. Does anyone else want to?
I can ask a question if somebody else doesn't have one.
That sounds wonderful. Take it away.
Hi, yeah, thanks for that very beautiful and colourful presentation. I was curious, I'm sure you designed the presentation, and I wondered if you might like to reflect on some of the graphics and how the research works into the presentation itself.
So basically, because I'm doing a research about indigenous knowledge in Africa, it wouldn't be fair, or wouldn't be nice for me to present, for my presentation not to be Africanized or use my own, like, use element of what I'm, like, not to, like, practice what I preach. So basically these, like, the elements and colors are all like African patterns I picked, I designed myself, because I'm trying as much as possible to incorporate all these things into my life. Even like I specifically wear certain shirts, certain bracelets, certain things that I feel it makes me feel home, makes me feel it identifies who I am, and yeah. So basically, I'm just practicing what I preach. So if that's a short answer to your question.
It certainly shows. I must admit, I wanted to make a comment about your presentation as well. I love the your aesthetic is beautiful as always. So I'd like to thank you for presenting and thank you to all of the presenters in this afternoon's session. It's been fascinating, and as I have said previously, we can take this conversation into the Q&A. Feel free to get in touch with each other. There's so many interesting ideas here, and I can see that there's great friendships and collaborations that could come out of this meeting here today. So thank you to everyone for joining us. We have our virtual drinks in 7 minutes or so. So that's the end of